Hamlet by William Shakespeare, the Bird of Avon. Hamlet, the Prince of Denmark, was a happy young man, but his happiness was sadly crossed when his father, the king, suddenly died under dubious circumstances. And then the young prince was even more shocked and upset when his mother, Queen Gertrude, married his uncle Claudius in unusual haste. Claudius became the new king, and Gertrude did not appear to be unhappy with a new husband. But Hamlet moved around, for more he thought about his father and the unusual conduct of his mother, the sadder he became, losing interest in life itself. He knew his uncle to be wicked, while his father was wise, just, and honest. He wondered how his mother could marry such a man and forget his father so soon. He grew suspicious and began to think that something must have gone wrong somewhere. He could not accept his father's death as natural. It might have been planned by his uncle with a view to become the king. He did not think his mother was innocent, for the way she married Claudius showed she was too aware of the plan. Brooding over all this, Hamlet became nearly mad. The new king and the queen did not quite know that Hamlet was suspecting them. They thought that was only natural that Hamlet should mourn over the death of his father a little longer than usual. So they did everything to cheer him up. They tried to persuade him to give up his black clothes and stop mourning, but the black clothes reminded them of their guilt that they wanted to forget. But Hamlet would not listen. He continued to behave the same way. This led Gertrude and Claudius to conclude that Hamlet must be in love that left him so distracted and depressed. Hamlet had a friend. His name was Horatio. He saw Hamlet and told him a strange story. It was about the ghost of his father, the dead king. The guards on duty before the palace had seen the ghost thrice at midnight. Hamlet was surprised, for he could not make out what it all meant. But about one thing he was sure, and it was that the ghost must have its reason to appear. So he decided to keep watch with Horatio. Hamlet questioned the soldiers and learned from them that the ghost appeared in the familiar armor of the dead king. Its face wore a sad look, and he seemed to have something to tell. Hamlet, with his friend Horatio and a soldier, came to sit up that night and wait for the ghost before the palace. It was midnight. Outside, it was all quiet, but inside the palace, the king and the queen were still feasting and enjoying themselves merrily. The noise they were making could be heard. As they were waiting and stood listening, Horatio alerted Hamlet. He whispered, "There it comes. Look, my friend, it is approaching." Hamlet looked and saw the ghost. It looked like his father. Hamlet cried out, "You seem to be my father, but what makes you come like this? Are you really my father? What have you to tell me? What do you want me to do?" The ghost made a sign and asked Hamlet to come to him alone. Horatio would not let Hamlet follow the ghost, for he was afraid it might do him some harm. But Hamlet pushed him aside and followed the ghost. The ghost told him that it was his father. He also told him that he was murdered by Claudius, and he would like Hamlet to avenge his father's death. But he should not do anything to his mother. She must be left alone to atone for her sin. Saying this, the spirit disappeared. Hamlet came back to Horatio and the soldier. He made them promise that they would not say anything about what they had seen that night. He told Horatio what the ghost had said to him. He made up his mind to behave in a strange way, as if he was mad. For that way alone, he could fool Claudius and his mother and keep himself out of suspicion. In the meantime, he would plan his revenge. He told his friend all about this. Thus Hamlet's behavior became stranger now. Even his talks were incoherent more when he was with the king and the queen. The king and the queen did not know how he would get over his grief that had driven him mad. They decided that it could not be the death of his father. There must be something else that made this behavior so strange. What could it be? It was not long before they believed that the reason behind his madness was love. Polonius, an old and wise man in the court, had a beautiful young daughter, Ophelia. Hamlet knew her and liked her. Polonius hoped that one day Hamlet would marry her, but he was not sure if Hamlet really loved her. He advised Ophelia to remain indifferent, for her coldness would draw Hamlet closer to her if he really loved her. Ophelia had much respect for her father's wisdom, so she treated Hamlet with coldness, not readily responding to his love. When Hamlet pretended madness, he came to Ophelia in shabby dresses, looking sad and bewildered. Ophelia reported this to her father, and Polonius in his turn told the king and the queen that Hamlet was mad with love for his daughter. He hoped that the king and the queen would arrange for the princess's marriage to cure him of his madness and see him happy. Then again Hamlet wrote a mad letter to Ophelia, and Ophelia gave it to her father. And the wildest love letter showed beyond doubt that it was love, not the death of his father, was the cause of his madness. So Ophelia to Polonius said, "Now I do not doubt that the prince really loves you, for your coldness had turned him mad." The king and the queen were more at ease, for now they were sure that Hamlet was not obsessed by any suspicion about the circumstances in which his father died. But they were deceived. Hamlet had nothing to do with love. He only feigned madness to take his time off and decide on his future course of action against the murderers of his father. But he had still doubt about the ghost. Was it really credible enough? He thought and still failed to make out what he should do to take revenge. Was the ghost really the spirit of his dead father? His doubts prevented him from taking any decision. Then if even he had taken a decision, he did not see how he could take his revenge. The king was well protected. A guard was always there to save him. The queen too was almost always with him. So Hamlet remained unhappy and troubled in his mind. He often thought if life was worth living in his unhappy state. At last, he decided to find out whether his uncle and mother were really involved in the murder, and soon he thought of a way to do it. A wandering troupe of actors came to perform a play in the palace, and Hamlet took great interest in it. Hamlet saw them and chose a play about a terrible murder of the Duke, Gonzago. The Duke was poisoned by a near relation who married the Duchess soon after. Hamlet said to the actors that he would change the play a little and add a few lines to improve it. Tomorrow at night he was to stage the play before the king and the queen. So Hamlet made the necessary changes to make the murder resemble that of his father. He knew that the resemblance would strike his uncle and mother, and their reaction would show their guilt if they were really guilty of murdering his father. So all the arrangements were made as Hamlet planned, and both the king and the queen were invited to see the play in the evening. They were not aware of the trap Hamlet had laid for them. They readily agreed to come, for they seemed to be relieved to see Hamlet recover from his madness and take active part in staging the play. As the king and the queen arrived and the play was about to begin, Hamlet found a convenient place for himself from where he could watch them. Horatio too took great interest in this plan, so he was with Hamlet. When the play began, the Duke and the Duchess were seen together talking. The Duchess was telling her husband that even if the Duke had died, she would never marry another man. She said only those women would marry the second man who have killed the first. Hamlet saw clearly that his mother had grown pale. Soon the play was having effect on the guilty. The second scene began with more pronounced effect. The Duke was seen asleep in the garden, and a man was seen approaching stealthily. He stood by the Duke and poured poison into his ear. Now Hamlet's uncle Claudius was very much upset and showed signs of fright. Hamlet saw this and came forward to explain the scene to him. He said, "That man is there to poison the Duke and to take all the Duke has. The scene that is to follow will show how that murderer wins the hearts of the Duke's widow and marries her." Claudius looked at Hamlet impatiently, and his face was pale with fear. He got up and hurried away with the equally upset queen. Those who were there to enjoy the play failed to see what could have upset the king and the queen so much. But Hamlet and Horatio had no doubt now that the ghost had told the truth. The king was really murdered and Claudius was the murderer. Hamlet has no reason now to vacillate. It was his duty to avenge the death of his father. But before he could make up his mind about the measures he should take for revenge, a messenger came and told him that his mother desired him to see in her private room. In fact, it was the king who told the queen to send for Hamlet and tell him that they were not pleased with Hamlet's recent behavior. He ordered Polonius to hide himself behind the curtains in the same room where Hamlet would be with his mother. Polonius would listen to their talk and report it to the king afterwards. As Hamlet came into his mother's room, the queen began rebuking him and said his behavior of the late made her extremely unhappy. She said, "You have offended your father too." But Hamlet replied, "And you don't think you have offended my father, the dead king?" The queen said impatiently, "That is a stupid question." Hamlet was more rude now as he said, "No, mother, you cannot evade it now. You must tell me what you have done to my father." He did not want to kill his mother, but still he seized her by the hand and made her sit down. The queen was very much frightened, so she shrieked, "Do you want to murder me now? Oh, save me! Help! Help!" Hearing the Queen, Polonius got frightened and thinking that Hamlet really intended to kill his mother, he too shouted in panic, "Help! Help! Help!" Hamlet took Polonius for Claudius and he drove his foot through the curtain to kill the man behind it. Thus Polonius was killed. Hamlet was not really worried, but the Queen cried in panic, "Oh, how cruel and foolish it is to kill a man like this." Hamlet said, "Not quite as cruel as to kill the king and marry his brother." Hamlet was desperate and said, "It was both wicked and heartless to forget a good and devoted husband so soon on his death and marry one who had caused his death. How could you marry such a dishonest and wicked man who had murdered your noble husband?" The Queen was very much ashamed of herself. She could now see how wicked she was and she implored Hamlet to stop accusing her so mercilessly. But Hamlet would not stop, for he had a lot more to say. At this time the ghost of his father appeared before him. The ghost of the king told Hamlet to leave his mother alone. Instead, he must find the murderer and take his revenge. The spirit vanished after urging Hamlet to have pity on the Queen, who was almost dead with fear and shame. The Queen did not see the spirit, so Hamlet saved him and think that he must have gone mad again. After all this, the king could see Hamlet's mind clearly. So he decided to have him killed. To let him live would be dangerous for him. He planned to send him out of the country and have him killed there. Now his excuse to send him away came quite handy when Polonius was killed by him. He pretended as though he was sending Hamlet away only to shield him from any danger from the bereaved family who might seek revenge. Thus the plan was made to send Hamlet to England, where his men would kill him on arrival. He also sent a message to King of England asking him to see that the prince was put to death as soon as he set foot on that land. But Hamlet had suspicion about the wicked king's intention. So though he showed his willingness to go to England, he kept his eyes open. On board the ship when all others were asleep, found the letter for the King of England and read it. He quickly erased his name and wrote the names of the two men whom the king sent with him. Now the letter advised the King of England to put those two men to death. The following day, the ship was attacked by the pirates. Hamlet boarded the pirate ship and fought bravely with them. While he was engaged in a fast fight, his ship escaped. He was alone with the pirates. But when the pirates came to know who he was, they did not harm him. They hoped to have the reward for saving the life of a prince. So they brought Hamlet back to Denmark and left him at the nearest port. Hamlet did not lose any time to inform the king of his safe return. He told the king that he would explain everything to him when he would be with him the next day. He also wrote to his friend Horatio telling him that all had happened. Horatio met Hamlet soon after this, and on their way home they came across a gravedigger who was busy digging a new grave. They knew from him that it was for a woman who had just died. As they were talking, the dead body was carried to the place, and Hamlet and his friend were surprised to see that the king and the queen, with many others following it. Ophelia's brother Laertes was also with them. The two friends hid themselves and watched from a distance as the priest was busy with the burial service. They learned from him that the woman to be buried had killed herself. Then came the queen as she was placing flowers on the grave. They heard her say, "I fondly wished to make you my Hamlet's wife, dear Ophelia." Hamlet was startled to hear this. So it was Ophelia whom he loved so dearly. He was shocked to know this and he came out to see Ophelia in her grave. Laertes saw him and accused the prince of murdering his father and driving his sister mad with sorrow. With anger and sorrow, Laertes was ready to fight with Hamlet on Ophelia's grave. But Hamlet said to him, "I loved Ophelia more than a brother would." Saying this, he left the place with Horatio. Now the wicked king Claudius saw his opportunity to kill Hamlet. He knew that Laertes was a skilled fighter with sword. So he arranged a fight between Laertes and Hamlet. As Laertes was already angry, he meant to encourage him to take his revenge. He gave him the sharp-pointed sword, which was poisoned. He was sure that even a simple wound would prove fatal for Hamlet. It was against the rules, so Hamlet did not quite suspect anything foul. The king did not take any chance this time. If Hamlet succeeded in killing Laertes instead, he kept the poisoned wine ready for him. So the fight started and Hamlet proved himself a much better fighter and Laertes was no match for him. But at last Laertes succeeded in wounding Hamlet, and Hamlet exchanging his sword with that of Laertes wounded him too. Now Laertes, as he fell, told Hamlet of the poisoned sword. Meanwhile the queen had drunk the poisoned wine kept for Hamlet. As she was dying, she cried out, "Oh, I'm poisoned!" Leaving Laertes, Hamlet now turned to his uncle and driving the poisoned sword into him, fell dead. At last he kept his promise and avenged the murder of his father. but he did it at the cost of his own life. Please like, share and comment on this video. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.